tales for dark nights.
Want to make sure you never miss a Chilling Tales for Dark Nights video again? Be sure to subscribe and hit that bell to turn on notifications. The following program is a production of Chilling Entertainment and the creative team at Chilling Tales for Dark Nights, and a proud member of the Simply Scary Podcasts Network. Visit simplyscarypodcast.com to learn more about this and our other weekly storytelling programs. Thank you for listening, and enjoy the show.
Good evening. I'm storyteller Otis Jiry, and I ain't your grandfather. From where I'm from, we don't do bedtime stories. And if that's what you were expecting, you're in the wrong place. If it's terrifying tales you're after, well then, I've got just the thing. Get comfortable, settle in, turn off the lights, if you dare. Your night is about to get a whole lot darker. Who needs sleep anyway?
Good evening. You're listening to Scary Stories Told in the Dark. Welcome, dear listeners, to Season 15, Episode 19. I'm your host, Otis Jiry, and in this episode, I'll be performing 3 tales to terrify you, courtesy of authors Dale Thompson, Hyde Price, and Mike Mann. Tonight we'll hear stories of bothersome bites, inconvenient intruders, and curious cabins. You're listening to the standard edition of tonight's program, which contains the first 2 spine-tingling stories. If you'd like to show your support and enjoy an extended version of this and other episodes with twice the terror, visit simplyscarypodcast.com and click Patrons in the upper menu to sign up today. Thank you for your support. Now, it's time to take a walk together down the moonlit trail, so lock your doors, turn your lights down low, and settle in. Yeah, the show is about to begin. Some people just can't stay dead. No matter if it's natural causes, a car accident, or you just happen to accidentally not see them and run them over with a lawnmower. Most times we stop moving. But come science, magic, or just the unknown, some do get up and have a hankering for the living. Call them zombies, or ghouls, or not quite vampires. They're definitely not something you want to meet in the middle of the night, or really any time. Dale Thompson kicks us off with a lovely little story of a man who has just all the luck. The zombie apocalypse just started and already he's been bitten. But as we shall see, it's not the ending, but the journey that's really important. Without further ado, I present to you, I, Zombie. I've been bitten. Oh man, that hurt. Bitten. This just can't be. I've seen it before. This is chalked up, man. Me bitten. Not just any old bite, but deep. It punctured the skin, and by Jove, it stung too. There was blood. It was not much, but I had to compress it. I didn't even see it coming. These ghouls move so slow, lumbering along as if they have all day to get where they're going. And then I right into one. It stunk to high heaven. It was foul, like rotting meat, and its breath was a putrid stench of grave. These things are cannibalistic. If I had not fought against the carnal power like I did, I'm afraid I might have been eaten whole. I cannot imagine what sort of dark foe has the ability to transmogrify these things. They don't appear to have been exhumed because their decay does not appear to be from the dirt. They're reanimated right after death, and if not disemboweled, they come back to some morbid life. From moribund to vivification, but not as humans, rather as grotesque monsters that crave the flesh, the meat, the substance of man. What was going to become of me now? Clearly, I'd been infected. What's the incubation time? When will this horrific thing manifest itself in me? Will I even know it's happening? Or will bits and pieces of my mind get chipped away until there's nothing left in my brain to tell me who I am? Am I not going to recognize myself in a mirror? Will I be a stranger to myself? God forbid. I'm not old. I have a life to live, maybe 40, and if I remained in reasonably good health, I may have lived another 50 years. I haven't been married, I have no children, I have no legacy that I can leave. It'll be as if I never existed. There's got to be a way to combat this. I knew of the contagion, the warnings to be careful, and I did everything that was asked of me. I messed this one up. This was a royal mistake, and there are no takebacks. I made no detours, but straight shotted it home, managing to cover the wound inflicted upon me with a scarf I conveniently had with me at the time. I searched the medicine cabinet for some medicine and found rubbing alcohol, known to some as isopropyl alcohol. I doused the bite marks with it, and it stung to high heaven, but I refrained from screaming. I added antibacterial cream and slapped a medicated bandage over it. I logged onto my computer and typed in, "Exposed to zombie bite, what to do next?" I knew it was going to say something bleak, and it did. In 3 minutes after the bite, the virus would have already traveled through my bloodstream into my brain. I'd been bitten in the neck like a vampire would have done, so I had nothing to amputate at the time except my head, even if I'd been carrying a newly sharpened knife. This stinking virus originated in a frozen lake in Russia. Of course, it would have been found in Russian ice or one of those other cold, dark places. Some idiot died 1,000 years ago in the Siberian permafrost, and for some unearthly reason, this person who died with the contagion was thawed, releasing this dastardly virus into the living world. I'm now a victim of this invisible, ancient pathogen and have no idea how long I have before it takes hold of my behavior. It's not as if I'd been infected with rabies or HIV. This is a communicable disease and has only one outcome, and that's death. This hasn't become a pandemic yet, but I've had it. I made it all the way through COVID and that pandemic without even a sneeze, a sore throat, or a cough, and here I am with a death sentence. The stupid Arctic microorganism consumes organic matter. I am organic matter. Why have I been exposed to this horrific Pandora's box? I'm viral. Maybe I could move to a colder climate and decelerate the speed of the contagion. But then again, that won't work. I'd have to lower my core body temperature, and that would most likely kill me anyhow. I'm like a dog with distemper, and when this virus finally takes control, I'll become the parasite with a need to feed, to infect, to take by force, and to spread my sickness to others. This is unacceptable. I just know from the few cases reported that the transformation is slow and painful. Should I mention this to my doctor or a friend? No, probably not. Even Weird Al Yankovic has a song called Tacky where he sings, "If I'm bitten by a zombie, I probably won't tell you." I believe that's the best rule of thumb. I can't find anything on the web of a serious nature that addresses my predicament. I'm doomed. I sat for a good while in one place behind my computer screen, staring at some anime zombie game advertisement, which I'd paused out of disgust. I finally decided I was hungry and thirsty. I went to the kitchen and made me a ham sandwich and a can of Coke. Since I lived alone, my comfort was my TV, and thus I went to the living room with my Coke, ham sandwich with extra mayo and a bag of corn chips. I turned straight for the news. It was not as if I needed more negativity in my life. Had I not been watching the news for a couple of days, so the world could have already gone to hell in a handbasket. I knew my life was screwed, but what about everyone else on this godforsaken planet? I tuned in at the top of the hour, so the headlines were being reported. It appeared that I was not the only one who had been bitten. Several cities were reporting dozens of assaults, and it was not good because the attacks were becoming more frequent. They didn't go so far as to say the words outbreak or pandemic, but used the word contagion, viral, and transmittable, which meant one thing. This zombie infestation was at least an epidemic, and there were warnings and advisories to stay indoors if you did not have to be outside. I was thinking that, oh, brother, this was just great. I was torn. Did I turn myself into police? Did I report to the emergency room like the news was reporting to do so, if one believes they may have come in contact with someone infected? I didn't know what to do. Thus I changed the channels to sports highlights and finished off the bag of chips. I was about to turn in for the night, thinking it could be my last day on Earth as a human being when the phone rang. I was one of those few people who still had a landline. "Hello?" I asked. "Roger. How are you, buddy?" The voice was from Leon, who was a close friend. "How are things over your way? Things here are bad." "Oh, I don't know. I've been watching the news, and it looks like things are getting out of hand," I said, unwilling to let him know about my own imposed sentence of death. "Me and the wife were going upstate to the cabin. We can swing by and pick you up if you want to go," Leon offered. "No, buddy, I think I'm good. I'll ride this one out. I got the double locks in the doors. It should be good," I said, already worried to death about my health. "Well, if you change your mind, call me. We'll be near your place in about 30 minutes. If you don't call, we'll just keep on going," Leon said. "I'm good, but thanks. When this is all over, I'll have you over for some barbecue," I promised, knowing that I'd most likely never speak to Leon again. After the phone call, I went back to the TV and flipped through the channels to find a different news station. I suppose that I was looking for some better news or someone to say, "Just kidding, we're making the whole thing up." But what I saw and heard was crippling to my overall well-being. Just within those few minutes I'd spoken to Roger, the reporters were broadcasting words like dire situation, abysmal conditions, spirited rioting, and diminished capacity. I did not know what the last one even meant. Knowing my time was short, I abandoned my negativity of social media and ugly mainstream news, and I opted to locate my video recorder. Yes, I was still one of those people who had one instead of using my video phone's option. Luckily, I was fully charged, so I was in business. I set the camcorder on the dresser, pointing at the bed, and then I addressed the camera. "Hello, I'm Roger Miracle. I live at 234 Elliott Street, and I'm going to record my final days as a record of my decline in health. I've been bitten, and I'm waiting for the virus to take me over. In that time, I hope to either find a solution or become brave enough to, maybe jump from a bridge. At this time, I don't feel sick whatsoever, although I have been bitten in the neck." I stopped the recorder and rewound it to make sure that it was properly recording. Viewing the footage back, I practically leapt out of my skin. I saw the impossible. I saw what I would assume would be the imperceptible, yet I could see them as clear as me. On the screen, surrounding me were bloodless zombies peering over my shoulders like a photobomb. I instantly leapt from the edge of the bed and turned my head in every direction. I practically convulsed from fright. Yet there were no zombies lingering in my bedroom. I shook my head petulantly and said aloud, No, it can't be. My voice seemed to have changed somewhat. It was flat, listless, lazy almost. I panicked. The transformation had begun. I had not decided what to do. It's hard to make up your mind when you're slowly changing into a brain-dead zombie. As profane as this was to me, I knew I was damned. My mind was already playing tricks on me. I studied the video footage that I shot again, and those ghoulish faces were still there, leaning over me with gapped mouths, drooling green sludge and mirthless, drawn, emaciated faces. Their eyes were round dots of black coal, and the flesh they wore was discolored, withered with black splotches, with revolting exudations, like a caustic liquid. It made me sick to my stomach to know I would soon be one of these undead, corporeal creatures. I couldn't allow myself to be transformed. This was unacceptable. After seeing the video footage, I became somewhat disoriented with emotion. My hope was entirely bankrupt, knowing I was losing myself, my identity, who I was. But all of this was ineffectual because I was failing to do anything about it. Out of desperation, I went to my cupboard where I kept my vitamins. I suppose I could fight off the effects naturally, so I took my multiple vitamins along with my vitamin C tablets and others I took for various reasons, and I began crushing them into a powder. I beat and smashed them, and once this was done, I divided the pile into 3 days. Now, this was about a normal 90-day allotment of vitamins, but I was going to take them over the course of 3 days and see if this had any effect on slowing down my change. I took the first batch, mixed it in orange juice, and guzzled it down. I didn't care about the side effects or toxicity. I wanted to combat this thing before it had gotten me. 15 minutes later, I began to become nauseated, and my stomach went into cramps, which turned to vomiting and diarrhea. I did everything I possibly could to hold it in, but it was inexorable and austere. My body wanted no part of it. I'd be reluctant to do a second dose, evidenced herein by the mess I struggled to clean up afterward. I was terrified to attempt sleep, like a man awaiting a hangman's noose. My house had become that holding cell, the world of the penitentiary, and my body was death row. If I went to sleep, I may not awake to being myself. My world was becoming distorted, and I knew that soon I'd have bouts of hallucinations until the psychosis became delirium. Then it would be all but over. Someone was banging on my front door. This was an odd time of night, and especially with all the warning bullets everywhere, for anyone to be out. Then I thought, oh my gosh, I bet it's Leon. That knucklehead has come to save me. I swept the camera from the dresser and proceeded to the front door, but before I reached the door, another noise, not familiar at all, could be heard. It sounded like more than one person moaning and groaning as if in a struggle of sorts. I stopped and waited. I was not about to open that door just yet. There seemed to be a fierce struggle of some kind happening on my front porch, and an intense curiosity in me directed me to look out the window. I snuck to the window and gently pulled back the curtain, creating only enough of a crack to see with my right eye. On my front porch were unknown people, but they were behaving oddly, which indicated to me that these were freaking zombies trying to get into my home. I pressed the record button on the camera and pointed it toward them. They were quite pathetic, moving awkwardly as if hardly in control of their limbs. There had to be a dozen or so jostling for position. These infernal, lumbering monsters were way too close in proximity for my comfort, but I addressed them through the door. I raised my voice to quite a volume. "Hey, get off my porch, you idiots! I already have been bitten." I listened for a response. There was a brief moment of quiet, then they stirred up again, beating and banging on the door. "You're wasting your time, you morons! I'm already one of you! Now get off my porch!" Again the raucous, eased as if they were considering what I'd said, but that was short-lived. I'd appreciate a little respect until my transformation is complete, I demanded. But this time they ignored me and sounded hungrier than before. Seeing that negotiations had come to a standstill, I went to the garage, which was attached to the house, and located a chopping axe. If they were coming through, I was going to make them pay. I wouldn't be threatened in my own home. In all probability, they'd probably overtake me before I could cleanly cut off all of their heads, so I began to reconsider my knee-jerk reaction. In all practicality, it might be better to give up the ground, take the car from the garage, and take a drive to see how the rest of the community was faring. And that's what I did. I loaded a few items, including the axe, and climbed into the driver's seat. I pushed the garage remote controller, and the door began to lift. Out from around the corner, a couple of ungainly zombies dragged their feet in my direction. I started the car, and with a shift into reverse, I plowed them over like bowling pins. I'd never run over anyone in a car before, but I am not ashamed to admit that it was a splendid moment of satisfaction from the experience. My actions were completely justified. I had no misgivings in doing it either. It was either them or me. I followed the street, not turning off the main part, but driving slowly so I could examine the area more keenly. It was funny that when you slow down, you notice more things that you miss when driving at greater speeds. Atmospherically speaking, there was a looming sense of foreboding gloom attached to the neighborhood. There were no lights on at any house, and no one was stirring that I could see other than the pack of ravenous zombies at my house. Then my heart stopped, and I slammed on the brakes because a very upset and frightened woman had run out into my direct path. I barely stopped, and she was screaming in desperation. I didn't know what to do. She was dressed in pajamas, soiled as if she had fallen down more than once. She had both hands pressed on the hood of my car as if she was refusing to allow me to pass. She was yelling something at me, so I put a subtle crack in the side window and heard her plainly now. "Please help me! They're coming!" I didn't have much to lose, and this could be my last charitable Samaritan gesture before I was changed and went on the hunt. I'd hoped that, although I was damned, that God might not sink me too far down into hell. After all, I was rendering aid to this poor woman. I motioned with my hand, and she accepted, throwing herself inside with me, saying thank you, half a dozen times before I told her there was some cold water in the back seat. She must have been thirsty because she climbed halfway over the seat and had the cap off the bottle before she returned entirely to the front seat. "I'm Roger. Are you okay?" I noticed her pajamas had Winnie the Pooh designs. She was out of breath, and after she took a good long swig, she answered, gasping for air. "I'm Maddie. Those things are everywhere." "Yeah, I was just overrun at my house," I admitted. "Where are you going?" she asked, calming down with every breath. "I don't know. I can't go back to my house. I thought I'd see what was happening outside, but from the looks of you, it's spread everywhere," I said. Maddie was too old to be fooled, but not so young that she was naive either. And I made sure my scarf was pulled up to cover my wound. I had no impulse to bite her, which was good. She was quite congenial, and this made me feel more human. I was so afraid to lose the connection. The further we drove out of the more populated areas, the darker the night became, and with not even a glow of a light burning off in the distance. "Oh, cool. I see you have a video camera." She noticed it in my lap. "Yeah, I thought I'd document the disaster in real time, but that's when my house came under siege," I said. "Watch it," she yelled. I looked up right in time to see a man standing in the road. He was contorted and jerking violently under the sepia haze of a sick moon. I stopped the car and turned on the camera. "He's changing," Maddie said, stating the obvious. I suspected the man, who was in his 60s. He began to thrash about, gesticulating uncontrollably. It was a horrible scene, seeing the final stages of a man. My paranoia raised watching this abomination occur. This would be me shortly, I thought. For whatever reasons, I thought of my sins, my transgressions, my non-Christian living, and I admitted to myself that I had been a carnal man, not an evil man, but selfish and at times iniquitous. I looked at Maddie and I asked her, "Do you believe in God?" She looked at me, puzzled from the unprovoked religious question. I believe in life after this life. God, the heavens, the cosmos. I believe in something, but I've never been religious. Religion creeps me out, she conceded. I thought for a moment, watching this newly transformed zombie standing on rickety legs with its decaying mindset, and how, in comparison, I really was innocent and bedraggled. I was only moments from looking as unkempt and unfeeble as this poor damn soul. It would soon be enervated, me, emaciated, and as forlorn, just another abandoned soul. Maddie remarked, "Fear of the unknown. Is that not what it means to be afraid, being exposed, made vulnerable, losing control? What if we find out that the truth we believed in was all a lie? Not just my truth and your truth, but all truth. You know, to realize that life, love, friends was untrue." I thought for a moment because she had a nerve. "Maddie, take my car and drive. Drive as far as you can," I said, no longer wanted to keep her in the dark. I pulled down my scarf, revealing my infected bite. The lines on her face became crooked, her lips slightly parted as if she were either going to say something or to scream. Unpredictably, she recoiled, her eyes lit up, and I felt a sharp pain in my ribs. The door opened and she was out of the car on her feet as quickly as her knife-wielding accuracy had struck me. She had gotten me good. I was sure I lost a lung, being stabbed precisely through my protective cartilage. I believe the knife attack hurt worse than the bite to my neck. What was that for? My body went into a protective survival shock mode, but I told her, "It's okay, I understand. Please, take the car. I'll let you have it." "Then get out and walk away," she demanded, no longer being a reflective personality. And I did just that. I took my axe and backpack out of the car along with my video camera, which was still recording, and began walking away. The zombie we'd seen changing just ahead of us had caught our scent. Most likely it had smelled our blood, like any good predator could, and it was stumbling toward us. Maddie leaped into the driver's seat, slammed and locked the door. She did look at me sadly and mouthed the words, "I'm sorry." I kept the video rolling because I knew I would never see her again, but someone who might find this would see her, though she had severely and deliberately wounded me. The car sped off, missing the zombie by inches. I suppose she'd thought about running it over, but possibly inflicting such pain just wasn't in her after seeing what she had done to me. Who knows what she was really thinking, if anything at all. I raised the axe and charged the zombie, who was practically upon me, and severed his head with one swing. I knew the axe was sharp, but I also didn't realize how easily a head could be detached. I expected lots of shooting blood, but this impoverished man never bled a drop of the red stuff. What came out was a black, sticky goo that stuck to the head of my axe. His blood had gelled in the transformation. I'd never seen anything like it. I looked up to watch Maddie driving away until her taillights had faded out of sight. Now I was truly on my own and in severe pain. I was bleeding, finding it hard to breathe, and with all that going on, I was changing into some sort of miserable, mindless creature that would soon be controlled by the lust for living human flesh. I walked a long way, avoiding the main road. I knew daylight was coming, and I had no idea how my physical appearance had changed, if it had changed at all. I was sure I should have already begun drastic physical deformities. I was immensely tired and truly needed a rest despite my concerns about waking up not knowing myself any longer. I needed to go back home. Good fortune found me. I stumbled upon an abandoned truck. There was no one in sight. I saw nothing wrong or illegal about using it. I took the truck and drove back to my house in hopes that the zombies had abandoned it by now. When I pulled in, there were no bodies in the drive, although I had crashed into 2 of them on my escape. Armed with my axe, the video camera on shooting randomly, and struggling with the capability to walk just a little further, I managed to enter the house. The interior didn't appear to have been disturbed. I went to the sink and forced down a glass of water. At least the tap worked. What to do next? I went to the TV and flipped on the news. Obviously, a lot had occurred overnight because every report was about what was now named the zombie apocalypse. I had enough. It was time to sleep. As I turned to go down the hallway, I heard a melodious trilling. It was a chorus of phantasmal gluttony and ravenous indulgence with a macabre tone. I made my way cautiously to my bedroom, recording every step, but when I got to the door, I was met with the most despicably detestable thing I had ever beheld. Inside the room and on my bed, where I so had looked forward to sleeping, were 3 males and 1 female zombie intruder, and they were feeding on human bits and pieces. My room was a bloodbath of carnage. Over the bedspread, smeared up the walls and even dripping from the ceiling, was ripped, torn, and shredded, chewed flesh. I wanted to leap from my mortal coil and die on the spot. They had not noticed me yet as they feasted and gorged with sloppy, lip-smacking sounds. I couldn't help but observe even more pieces of human remains and 2 unidentified human heads, unsure if they were male or female. If I had not become so enraged at this appalling, reprehensible scene, I would have passed out from lack of blood and sheer acute malady where that dumb girl had plunged the knife into my side, which was causing me nearly as much anguish as the mental vexation of this unbearable scene before me. I could do nothing for the dead, and staying any longer would simply be a mistake. I backed away, but one of the floorboards gave away my position as it squeaked beneath my feet. This might have sealed my fate, I assumed. I just hoped that these abhorrent creatures were not light on their feet. I bolted for the front door, axe on my shoulder and not looking back. What was what was, and it could not be helped now. I burst through the front door and kept on running until I found myself behind a grocery store, gasping for air, leaning on metal dumpsters. A voice stirred a new emotion inside of me, and I turned. The voice repeated what was incoherently to me initially. "You, with that axe. What do you think you're doing?" I turned to see a robust man as round in girth as he was tall, but his most outlandish feature was the shotgun he was wielding in his fat, stumpy fingers. "Zombies," I gasped. The man halted his strides toward me and leveled the barrel of the gun, waist high, pointed directly at me. Our eyes became magnets, drawn together with primal fear. I had no defense against the shotgun. I had no plan A because I had already used plan B and I was cornered. "What are you doing back there?" the man asked, not diverting his aim. "Zombies overran my house. I was running for my life," I explained. "You're wise to carry that axe. My shotgun slows them up, but I figure if you decapitate those mongrel heads, they can't survive that," he said. Then his countenance distorted, and he demanded that I show him my neck. This was when the one-on-one conversation took a turn for the worse. I swallowed hard against the swollen lump in my throat. My mind raced with only worst-case scenarios. Fear began to knit its way throughout my chest. I tried to broach the conversation by saying something that came out all wrong. I was truly caught between worlds, and this was not a good feeling. It was as if time had stopped and I was caught in a contemptible state of suspended animation. The axe which I was leaning on became insubstantial to my survival. I attempted to exculpate my condition to him. I was attacked, but it was hours ago and I haven't turned. My mind is still me. I'm not one of them. I'd hoped by communicating clearly to the tubby man that he would not see me as this maladjusted, cretinous, flesh-eating psychopath. But that was not the case. What occurred next was like a misshapen marvel of sorts. The idiot became trigger-happy and fired a shot. Even before the pellet splattered me in the chest, I'd become uncontrollably enraged that this man would even consider unloading such vulgar violence against me. Unrestrained and taking the load fully in my chest, I bounced back against the dumpster, and with speed that I never knew I had, I rushed the man with my axe raised over my head. I should have been on the moribund finality, yet I was energized, charged with superhuman madness. I brought the head of the axe down and split the man's head straight down the middle. His look was that of mortal surprise. It all happened in a flash, and he never had a chance to reconsider his violence toward me. He dropped like a sack of potatoes, and I unwedged the axe from his gaping skull with the aid of my foot. Realizing that I was still alive, that the gun blast merely blew a hole in my chest, and the fact that I'd not already died of blood loss from the knife assault, I could only dread what my conclusion was. I'll admit I was awestruck by what I was becoming. I hadn't lost the ambivalent eagerness to resolve my situation. It was as if I was coming round to the reality of my quandary. I still had this modicum of humanity desperately trying to steer me. Yet my astonishing inclination was not a truculent response to the changes. Rather, I saw a resplendent world of ensorcelled delight. My mind must have rewired itself in the moment of getting blown away. The transformation that I was feeling was incomparable, terrible, yet indescribably beguiling. The possibilities seemed limitless as to what I could do next. My side no longer hurt. The hole in my chest no longer burned and ached. This was inscrutable, and I had to refrain from celebration so as not to draw unwanted attention my way. For the umpteenth time, I did attempt to talk myself out of a total transformation. In my inner evocations, as obscure as it was, I enunciated my words in such a way that I managed, convincingly enough, to hold off further unwanted changes. Afterwards, I wandered back to my house with the axe in hand. I needed to take my house back. I dreaded having to clean up the mess the zombies had made, but it was my house, and their lack of impertinence infuriated me. I went back to my carnal home of infestation and forcefully removed the unwelcomed occupants, piece by piece. First, their heads were rolled out onto my lawn. Then came the other bits that I savagely chopped to ribbons. I'll admit I was somewhat cataleptic, but I was still aware, and had the ability and capacity to choose. I have free will. I have turned, but not completely. Maybe I have a unique gene combination, but I am part human, and the other half I cannot say without being repulsed with myself. I seem to have become the off-sourcing of the world. I'm hated and feared by mankind and hunted by zombies who do not know that I'm now part of them. It's inevitable. As this distorted subhuman being that I've become, I cannot operate in the same manner as before. I'd narrowly escaped with my life more than once, so I suppose, for me at least, this is a new form and a new norm. I thought I needed a long rest. My eyelids were being lowered down like they had anchors attached to them. As the night grew older and while there was no hysteria or excitement, I put my bedraggled mind into a meditative mode which dissolved into a prayer. I was not naturally prone to petitions or contritions, yet supplications and communion with my Maker seemed to be the only outlet of hope that the grand potter of my mortal flesh of clay would listen. I didn't hear anything back, but I seemed to have eased my nerves and accepted the grim reality. I, zombie. I hope you enjoyed I, Zombie by Dale Thompson, as performed by yours truly. If you enjoyed that tale and would love to read more from tonight's very talented featured author, you can help support him by visiting simplyscarypodcast.com/Dale-Thompson. That's simplyscarypodcast.com/DALLE-THOMPSON. Thanks again for your support of this program and tonight's featured author. Well, guess things are looking up then, eh? Not quite alive, not quite dead, but clinging on desperately because there's just nothing else to do. Sounds like some TV shows I could mention. We turn next to Hyde Price, who brings us this delightful little follow-up about a convenience store, a quiet evening, and a couple of teens who are about to bring a whole load of trouble with them. Without further ado, I present to you How Convenient. I'd never seen a lazier pair than the two of them. Hey, stock the shelves, would you? The air conditioner had broken yet again, so I had left my back office door open, but even so, I was sweating bullets while I yelled from the doorway. Myron. Every time I ever heard that name, it brought to mind guys with glasses who liked to play tabletop games or blue-jacketed private school preppies with a handkerchief in a front pocket. The Myron in my employ was neither. He constantly wore earbuds, shirts for bands, who I was too old to know the kind of music they made, and had pink-dyed hair and spiky anime hair that probably weighed more than he did. Seriously, he was 17 years old and probably weighed 110 pounds max. It certainly wasn't a healthy weight as a result of exercise, because when he came into work, he barely ever moved. Chance, though, was a very different story. Myron just never seemed to want to work because he just couldn't get up the energy to do it. Chance took every opportunity he could to avoid work because he was just that much of a creep. He was actually younger than Myron by a year, but you'd never know it to look at him. He was 200 pounds of muscle and constantly wore T-shirts 2 sizes too small to show off as much as possible. If he'd been smart, he would have been on the football team at school, but that would mean putting in an effort for something bigger than himself, and Chance never did anything for anyone but himself. You might be wondering why I would hire them if they were so useless to me. Well, the thing is, I didn't have much of a choice. I was just a corner mom-and-pop store, minus the mom, after my wife passed 3 years ago, and I'm trying to keep afloat against the Whole Foods that moved in a year ago. And that's where the good kids all worked. They could sign up for medical, dental, all kinds of benefits I could never supply even if I lived to be 100. No, I had to take what I could get. I couldn't stock much anymore. I was diagnosed with COPD issues and told I had to start eating more vegetables by a doctor who was young enough to be my kid. I told him if I wanted more vegetables, I'd start a garden. He thought it'd be funny to ask me if I was going to eat meat, if I was going to start a slaughterhouse. I then told him about my hunting rifle collection and the 20-point buck I'd hanging on my wall, and said he could come by for steaks anytime he wanted if he didn't mind the occasional pellet in the meat. Yeah, maybe I was a little salty and he was just trying to help, but after basically being told I couldn't stock shelves in my own damn store, even though I quit smoking almost 20 years ago, I wasn't in the best of moods. Come to think of it, I'm almost never in the best of moods. I think a part of it is watching the world change. I don't much care for it if you haven't noticed. I came of age in the 80s. I used to go to midnight shows and watch zombie movies when they were the ones worth caring about, not all this claptrap with CG blood exploding all over the place. Even the goofy haircuts and style, they had style. Music sounded better. I don't even know how to describe it, but it's sort of like these two kids loafing around in front of my store. It's like everything out there just got lazy. On one hand, anyone can sit down in front of a computer and compose a damn symphony. On the other, by anyone, that also means people who have no business making music and can't even be bothered to pick up a guitar or lay a beat on some drums. But then you'd need money for all that. That ran out for me a long time ago, and now all I do is make sure I can still afford to make payments. The missus and I paid off the mortgage long ago. Living in one house for 30-odd years give you that time. But the cars? Damn. I've gone through 5 in the past 20 years. Leases will kill you, but again, it's like they build these things to wear out after that magical 3-year mark passes. Even if you buy it, chances are it's made of parts you can't mess with. One time I tried to do a fix. God knows what it was. They all blur together. But I couldn't locate it, and the shop told me it was all handled electronically now, that it was supposed to go back to the dealership for repair. It's catch-22, I guess. Not only do most people not want to work for something anymore, but even if you do, there's stuff to make sure other people do it for you. I'm guessing you're thinking that's just me. Hell, probably is. I grew up wanting to be Judd Nelson in The Breakfast Club in a household more like Anthony Michael Hall. Hard to be a pissed-off, fist-to-the-sky rebel when you come home to 3 square meals a day and can't bring yourself to flunk a math test and risk disappointment. Good God, how old is that movie? Nah, never mind me. I'm rambling again. I was talking about the kids in my store, as much as I would have preferred not to. Yes, they were opposites, and they didn't do a whole lot around the store, but since I wasn't allowed to move as much as I used to, and no one else would hire them, well, we were stuck. Besides, I'd get compliments around town for doing what I could to help the unfortunate, since it was pretty much decided that the 2 of them would be off doing something that would land them in trouble one way or the other. That made me wonder, though, exactly what was the deal with Myron? Chance had no problem believing in his ability to cause trouble wherever he went. It took enough force of will for me to get him to back off when he almost destroyed the Slurpee machine when it broke. But Myron just didn't do much of anything. He listened to podcasts and music on his earbuds, and he kept up with the latest TikTok fads he could find. The pink his hair was now had been at least 3 other neon colors before then. And he made sure to inform me and Chance regularly about his latest romantic endeavors, which I still had a hard time believing weren't all just made up. But troublemaker? It just didn't seem like him. Weird. Definitely. Latent criminal? No. But this was my life now. They worked until 7 on the weekdays, sometimes until closed on the weekends, depending on their social lives, so I saw them on the weekends an awful lot. And then I had Sunday to myself because I closed. I needed that day. I had my social interactions during the week, so having one day to myself where I could make a pack of bacon and sit on the porch, rattle off some gas, and enjoy a brew while watching the deer run by, it kept me properly sane. But this wasn't Sunday. Not today. Nope. This was Friday, and instead of going off and being kids and making friends, drinking, partying, they were here until closing. I had to be stuck with them, barely listening, hardly working, but if I were to send them home now, the noise I would get from their parents as if I was some low-rent babysitter. Myron rolled his eyes, grabbed a box of French's mustard bottles, and started setting them up on the shelves, taking scant glances at the included invoice to make sure he had the correct count. Chance, in the meantime, went into the back to get beers to put in the refrigerator. Before you ask, yes, I always checked the supply to make sure everything was included afterward. I was young once, too. I know what they try and get away with at that age. We had a fairly slow night on a Friday, with our busiest time around 9:30, when a few regulars came in to buy for an evening movie night. They were loud, but they were usually always friendly. Even the 2 small kids. Well, not kids exactly, but everyone younger than me was a kid in my eyes, and they left without any incidents. We didn't have anything else happening until near closing time. I stay open late on the weekend, typically until 1, though depending on need, I might stay open a little earlier or later. I like to be flexible. It's one of the few advantages I have over the chain stores. This Friday was one where it seemed like closing early would not be an issue. I'd be able to get some much-needed shut-eye, and I could take my leave of these two. They hadn't had a whole lot to do the past hour or so, just some light sweeping and mopping. Then the doorbell above rang, and they came in. I'd never seen these kids before. Strangely enough, even Myron gave them an odd look when they came in, as if he hadn't seen them before either. What truly got me, though, was that while I had no idea who they were, I did recognize their style. I mean, I know anything over 50 is considered getting old these days, but I'm not so old that I don't recognize what the younger kids were doing in the 1990s. I may live out in the sticks, but I recognize a vintage Ren and Stimpy ball cap when I see one. My younger brother used to have the exact same one, and that was what was so odd. The early 90s was not exactly popular around here these days. Nostalgia for the era, yes. Actually wearing the neon skater clothes, no. There were 4 of them, the seeming leader of the group wearing the neon outfit and a mushroom haircut that was so big in those days. The next was wearing a jean jacket and a helmet t-shirt. Good grief, were they still even a band? The third had long red hair, a beard, and a far too tight green t-shirt over a too large stomach, and he immediately went over to the candy bars at the front. The fourth had the aforementioned ball cap, although I didn't see the logo on it at first because he was wearing it backwards. A white tank top and flare-out, well, we used to call them hammer pants, would be putting it mildly. Every alarm bell in my head was going off by the dozens. There was definitely something going on here, but at the same time, they didn't look like they were trying to do anything illegal. I just figured it would be a good idea to keep a close eye on him. Chance, in the meantime, got up from the cash register where he'd been sitting and reading one of the few magazines I had at the front, folded his arms and looked over the group. Finding everything okay? The boys must have picked up the same vibe I was getting, that something was up here. For probably the first time since he started working here, I was proud of Chance for actually giving a damn about the store. Chill, Holmes, just getting some chips. The leader smiled and grabbed a bag from the shelf, then proceeded to rip the bag open and started eating it. Before I could get a word out, Chance raised an eyebrow and beat me to the punch. You paying for that? Yeah, man, I got it. He said that, but at the same time he started stuffing chips in his mouth like he hadn't eaten in weeks. In fact, I noticed the 3 others sidling up to the refrigerators, snack aisles, all grabbing food and ripping open the packages. Now it was time to throw my weight around, as considerable as it was for all the wrong reasons. Hey, no more eating until you pay. Don't like it? You can get out now. We're closing in a few minutes, so get what you're getting and hurry up. Neon Jacket swallowed his chips and looked at me. Didn't I say chill? Or just? At that, he started coughing, gagging, making noises I didn't think could come from any person. He doubled over, and right there on my nice, clean floor, ralphed up a giant pile of chewed-up plain potato chips. But it wasn't just the chips. I could have expected blood or spit, but something else that was not chips was in there. Dirt, maybe? And something moving. It looked like some brightly colored beetles and something wriggling. I didn't look any closer after that because I didn't want to contribute to it myself. The other 3 all seemed to be having similar fits, coughing and hacking and puking up whatever they'd eaten. Stimpy Hat pulled a Gatorade out of the fridge and tried to chug it down, but he ended up firing it all over the walls. Myron, an aisle over, backed away. What the hell's wrong with you? Green-shirt bearded guy moaned, Damn, man, why won't anything stay down? Neon Jacket tried another bag of chips, but the same thing happened, and if I hadn't been more concerned about what was going on in my store, I would have been more upset about the mess they were leaving all over the place. Just keep trying. There's something here. Jean Jacket grabbed some gummy bears and tried to shove them in his mouth. Damn, dude. Tastes like ass. Everything does, but something will be good. I went into my office, telling them to leave would be no good. These clowns had some kind of virus or other medical condition. I'd be damned if I was going to let them do anything to me. So I got on my phone, yes, the one that actually plugs into the wall, those still exist, and called the cops. Myron and Chance looked back at me and I waved to them to get over here, maybe lock themselves in the back room until they left. 911, please stay on the line. What services do you need? Police, definitely. Maybe medical. Location? I gave her my address. Oh, hey, Hollis, you got trouble again? I suddenly recognized the voice, Nancy Spears, from the end of my street. I'd called her before with some shoplifters, though they didn't get very far. In a small town, nobody really does for something that obvious. Their parents got to them before the cops did and had them return the stuff they took. Still, though, Nancy had been very professional through the whole thing. Yeah, we got 4 teenagers eating everything in my store. They armed? They don't seem violent at the moment, but something's definitely wrong. Bring an ambulance. Maybe they got into some bad wild mushrooms or a new designer drug. Very whacked out. And get somewhere safe and sit tight. If they cause any trouble, hopefully their parents will pay for it. I ducked as a glass bottle smashed on the wall outside my door. Hey! I ran out to see Jean Jacket holding his stomach and moaning. What the hell is this? Get out of my store, now! He stared back at me, a look of sheer panic and pain in his eyes. Stop it, man. Can't you see we need help? We're starving. You want to go food? Go to McDonald's or something. Pay them your damn money, but I've already called the cops. Greenshirt, who looked more scared than the rest, looked at his friends. I think we should go, guys. I don't think we're going to find. Neon Jacket smashed his hand on an empty shelf that he had emptied himself. But the look of it. No! Something here will work. It has to. At this, Chance seemed as if he'd reached his limit. Hey guys, store's closed. Get out of here. When no one seemed to be listening, a fed-up Chance went over to Greenshirt. He placed a hand on his shoulder. As he did so, Greenshirt turned his head and sank his teeth into Chance's arm. Chance screamed and pulled away, looking at the bleeding wound. You crazy son of a bitch. And he launched a punch at Green's face. I expected the kid to fly backward and hit the floor. For the second time that night, I was glad for Chance, because I would defend him to the hilt if anyone tried to arrest him for it. But the kid didn't move. Chance's fist sank into the side of Green's face, driving into the skull, getting stuck for a moment on the bone and sinew. But instead of blood, it was just sort of a grayish, blackish goo. Chance, horrified, pulled his hand free. Green reached up to touch his face. Feeling the rough edges of where his cheek had collapsed inwards, he reached in, feeling his own tongue. Upon this realization, he began first to hyperventilate, then moan, then scream in a horrifically high-pitched way that was inhuman. Then Greenshirt suddenly stopped. He licked his lips, tasting the blood from Chance's arm. Oh, guys, I found it. It's so good. He turned back to Chance. Come on, man, I need just a taste. Chance swung another fist, but Green caught it, and by the looks of it, whatever they were infected with made them very strong. Green was as round as a donut, but I didn't think he could do more than eat one. But he twisted Chance's arm around and tried to lay in for another bite. And before I could react, he did. Chance screamed out as the creep tore a chunk out of his arm, chewing twice before swallowing. I could see it all happening in that gap in his face, and once the piece went down, he closed his eyes and smiled. Guys, it's like the McRib, but better. They probably tasted good, too. The other 3 turned to Myron and I, and Myron stumbled back down the aisle toward me. Green tried to get a Chance once again, but Chance placed his other hand on Green's head, pushing those searching teeth back. Myron turned to me. Hey, Hollis, what do we do, man? I saw what he meant. If the others were as strong as their friend, we didn't stand a chance. There were 3 of them against 2 of us, and while I had a back door, I never used it. The bolt on it rusted shut a few years ago, and the key jammed it in. It couldn't open for anything. Yeah, it's a fire code violation, I'm sure. But the odds of either a fire or an attack by 4 kids with some major health problem weren't exactly very high around here. Still and all, my office door was sturdy enough, and thankfully the mop bucket had been put back there, so it probably could add an extra brace to the metal door. As I thought about this, though, Chance looked over at me. I'd never seen that look in his eye before. It was pleading. He never pleaded. Damn it. Get in the office, Myron. But I can... Not time for arguments. Myron finally decided that listening was the best course of action, and he got into my office, pulling the door shut behind him. I didn't even care if he locked it. I had a spare key in my front pocket. My store is a rustic, simple kind of place. I could have sprung for those metal shelves you see everywhere that just snap into place. But my wife and I always figured it would be better to keep things looking more quaint. So the shelves were instead planks of wood, lately stained, and resting on top of cast iron piping. It was a farmhouse look she got from one of the online things. Not sure if it was Instagram or Pinterest or whatever people use now, but she'd always admired its simple decor and ease for construction. I was thanking my wife handily when I was able to take the empty shelf that neon jacket had cleared off straight into my hands, and then start swinging like a baseball bat. Neon charged at me, but I don't think he understood how hard I was swinging. He fell sideways into the canned goods, knocking them all over. Jean Jacket hopped in front, and in seconds had snatched the board from my hands. I waited for him to use it on me, but he simply tossed it away. Not only were they sick, they were stupid, too. Probably could have broken my arm if he'd thought about it. Instead, I reached down and grabbed a can of beef stew. He tried to fall on me, but despite his strength, he didn't get my arm fast enough. I started swinging that can right into his eye socket, hard. His face, slowly but surely, began to cave inward like a styrofoam Halloween decoration. And more of that brownish-black crap squirted from where I supposed his brain had to be lurking. He didn't seem to notice any pain, but he did get upset when he suddenly realized he'd gone partially blind. He grabbed at my face, realization dawning, and he too screamed like his fellow. I will say at this point I made a realization myself. These kids weren't sick. They were dead. Moving, certainly, but living people's heads weren't shriveled and black like that on the inside. Even unhealthy people don't crackle and ooze quite like this. In that moment, the idea of flesh-eating and bites ran through my head. I felt a knot twist in my stomach when I realized that Chance had been attacked and bitten. Well, if his last moments were to be in this store before he became some flesh-eating monster, I'd be sure to do everything I could to make him comfortable. It would be tough talking to his parents, though. Good people. But they took news almost as well as Chance did, which was not at all. With Jean Jacket off me, I got up and ran for Chance, barreling into Green Shirt and knocking him over. Pounded on him over and over, and my fist kept finding nothing but pockets of rotted flesh and splintering bone. And with each hole they picked up, the worse it began to smell. I really didn't relish cleaning this place up if we got out of here. When Greenshirt finally relented as he probed his new wounds, I grabbed Chance and pulled him out of harm's way. When Hammer Pants decided he was going to make his presence known. "Come here!" He reached out and grabbed my arm, raking his fingernails on my skin and drawing blood. "Damn, dog, you do smell good." He licked my arm, and at that I lost my cool completely, and with my free hand hit him right in the Ren and Stimpy hat. Didn't faze him. He launched his mouth at my arm, and I winced as his teeth sunk into my flesh. Damn, did it hurt. And now I realized I wouldn't make it out either. Maybe it was for the best then. I'd see my wife again, and after we got out of here to safety, I mean. Chance pushed at Hammer Pants. "Go of me, you dick!" And with a rage I didn't even think possible, Chance lifted the creep, his teeth ripping out of my arm in the most painful way possible, and carried him over to the Slurpee machine. Chance slammed the kid's head into the dispenser and turned on the juice. You know, there are things in life you never expect to see and wonder if it was something you were glad you saw or regret every moment you kept your eyes open. I'm still up in the air about what happened next. Firstly, it was the lime flavored. I don't know if that mattered or not. Secondly, it was set on full blast, which can be surprisingly quick on one of these machines. Hammerpants looked on in shock as the stuff poured into his mouth, a steady stream gagging him relentlessly. He looked like he was trying to throw it all up, just like he did earlier, but all it did was make it foam even thicker over his mouth. After a few moments, his tank top at the front grew wet, and then there was another squelch, and lime juice began pouring out from underneath it. The pour soon became a fountain, then a pond, and along with it, Hammerpants seemed to be falling apart. His legs, thoroughly soaked, fell off and sizzled, then his torso, his arms still somehow hanging onto his shoulder bones. Then his now fleshless skull flattened and poured out onto the floor. Yes, it is true. I've never seen a death by Slurpee before. It's both remarkable and disgusting at the same time. The other three backed away from the puddle of lime, not sure if they knew it would work on them, but they certainly weren't taking any chances. Greenshirt just looked at his melted compatriot and freaked out, running out the front door and into the night. Jean Jacket and Neon Jacket didn't seem quite so concerned. Jean Jacket finally came to his senses and picked up the board, shaking his head as he tried to focus on me with his one good eye. Neon, watching Jean trying to circle around me, started grabbing condiments off the shelf and threw them. One struck my arm, and man, if you've ever been hit with a fastball, glass, ketchup bottle, you know what pain can be. Chance, in the meantime, looked around for something he could use. He found it up above the ice cream chest, a fire axe, in the classic break in case of fire style, except mine read, in case of assholes. It was a novelty my wife didn't appreciate at the time, but now I was loving every second of it. Neon kept up with the bottle throwing, but now I knew to dodge them. But Gene, well, he kept on moving in closer, ever closer, and I was running out of space. The aisle I was in, unfortunately, was blocked off by the shelves Neon had knocked down earlier. With them both advancing, I didn't have much I could do, and for Chance to do the same, he'd have to get back around me and put himself in the path of fire. It didn't look good for us, but then again, I forgot that there wasn't just two of us. My office door opened then, and Myron came back out. I waved him back. "Myron, get back in there, it's two." Myron lifted one of my hunting rifles, aimed quickly down the sight, stock pressed neatly against his arm, and fired. Gene flew sideways, a hole appearing in the side of his head, skittering across the floor. Neon looked in shock before several bullets hit him center mass, and down he went as well. I raised an eyebrow. "Where'd you learn to shoot like that, kid?" "My dad's a hunter." "I didn't know you hunted." "You never asked." "And how'd you get in my gun cabinet? It's locked." "I know the combination." "Where'd you get that?" "You're more obvious than you know, and it's on your calendar." I blinked. My wife's birthday. So this is why Myron got into so much trouble. I have to remember that. However, this didn't help matters when both Gene and Neon got up. After all my years of movie watching, I wasn't as surprised when Neon got up. Gene, on the other hand, was a complete mystery. Half his head was now missing, and he still got up like he wasn't missing a beat. None of this made any damn sense. Myron unloaded the rest of the magazine at them, and they fell backward, but they seemed bound and determined to keep at us, though it did help that Gene's arm fell off after a couple more shots, so he really couldn't swing that board around anymore. I backed up and found myself up against the Coke refrigerator, and before I could sidle to the side, Gene charged at me, pressing me up against the plastic door before pulling me to the ground. We rolled back and forth a few times. Finally, though, he got on top of me with all his strength, pressing me into the ground. He was coming to try and bite at my face now, not something I looked forward to, considering how much blood I was still seeing coming out of my arm from that bite mark I got earlier. I heard a weird scraping sound. "Hollis, when I say so, try and roll to your right. I don't think I can. Just do it, damn it!" I could smell that nasty breath coming ever closer, and I nearly gagged as another one of those beetles dropped out of his mouth. But then the signal came. I rolled, and with one big push, I sent Gene flying to one side, unable to keep a grip with just one hand. He got up to come at me again, and that's when the Coke refrigerator came down on top of him. I didn't need to hear the squelch to know something went right. All I know is nobody could be that flat and do much of anything. A few cans of soda rolled across the floor, spraying helplessly as I stood up. In the meantime, Neon had been advancing on Myron, clearly seeing him as the biggest threat now, though why didn't really make sense. My gun had small rounds, weak stuff for small game, and while it could do damage in the right spots, it wasn't really enough to keep something undead from gaining on you. The gun finally clicked on empty. Myron was about to throw it on the ground until he caught my eye, got the hint, and carefully slung it over his shoulder. You don't drop guns, even empty ones. Beyond the danger, I didn't want it scratched. Neon smiled, but then Myron smiled too, as Chance threw him the axe he'd gotten from the wall. Neon stopped smiling when the axe came down, severing first his right arm, then his left. As the axe flew up and down again with the ferocity of an experienced camper who chopped firewood at every family retreat for probably 5 years, I realized that I had seriously underestimated Myron all this time. I began to wonder, in fact, if Chance was a little scared of him now. At the end of it, Neon lay in pile, all the parts still twitching, his mouth opening and shutting, but with no working vocal cords. He wasn't saying anything. Myron pushed back in his neon hair. "What do we do with those?" Chance looked. "Don't know. Burn 'em?" I shook my head. "Nope, no burning. But maybe they'll..." "You don't burn a zombie. Bad idea." Myron frowned. How do you know it was a zombie? "What else? Eats flesh. Walking corpse." "But they talked. They got shot in the head and kept moving. That's not a zombie." "I'm calling it a zombie, kid. That's the last of it." Myron looked at us. "They bit you. That means you're going to become one of them." I looked at Chance and then at my wound. I didn't feel sick, but then I didn't know how long we had. "Well, as long as we're okay, let's take care of these." We spent the next hour bagging up Neon's wiggling limbs in trash bags and threw him into a small hole behind the shop. Well, not just loose, I mean. We stuck them in a box, and through a lock on a chain we looped around the box. He ain't going anywhere for a while, at least not until we get some more answers. As it turns out, these zombies were different. When the police and the ambulance came a little later, they treated the bites, had us keep applying compresses, and we healed just fine. Guess it's not a disease, though it does make part of our story more understandable. You see, the police took so long to show up because they were already out at the crime scene, and since we're a small town, not much happens anyway, so it took them 45 minutes to get over to us. Seems they were investigating a hole near an old quarry. The soil was all ripped up, but what was stranger, they found an old ID in it. Some kid named David Pelley, last seen April 28th, 1981. Quick police check showed he and his 3 buddies all vanished that same night. Long overdue missing persons case. Dead ringer for Neon Jacket. So that explains some of it. Now we know who visited that night. But how is what we don't know, and really I don't know if we'll ever know. But ever since then I've had people ask me on occasion why Chance and Myron are still at the store. They never do anything except sit around. I tell them I couldn't find anyone more reliable. Plus, we're all waiting to see if Greenshirt will ever find his way back. I hope you enjoyed How Convenient by Hyde Price as performed by yours truly. I certainly hope Mr. Shirt doesn't come back. Not that I'm afraid of our heroes necessarily, but if you do recall, he rang up quite a tab, and somebody will have to pay eventually. Thanks again for your support of this program and tonight's featured author, as well as all of our authors who provided us with tonight's stories. Now, before we go, I'd also like to take a moment to thank you personally for joining me on this episode of Scary Stories Told in the Dark. If you enjoyed what you've heard on today's program, please take a moment to stop by our iTunes page or wherever else you listen to your favorite podcasts and leave us a 5-star review and a kind word. It makes a huge difference and would mean a lot to us. If you'd like to hear a premium extended edition of tonight's and all of our other episodes featuring twice the terror, visit simplyscarypodcast.com and click the Patrons link in the menu at the top of the screen. You'll find yourself at chillingtalesfordarknights.com, where you can purchase season passes for this podcast and our other quality storytelling programs. Or become a patron for as little as $5 a month and get access to our entire audio archive dating back to 2012, all of it ad-free. If you happen to use Facebook, Twitter, X, Instagram, or YouTube, you can follow and subscribe to Chilling Tales for Dark Nights there, where you'll get all of our latest updates and new releases and have the chance to interact with us each and every week. You can subscribe to me on YouTube as well at the Otis Jiry channel, where you'll find releases of my series, Horror Storytime, dating back to 2014, and you can find me on Facebook, Twitter, X, and Instagram too. Just search for Otis Jiry. Until next week, stay spooky and get some sleep, if you can.
Thanks for listening. You've been listening to Scary Stories Told in the Dark, a production of Chilling Entertainment and the creative team at Chilling Tales for Dark Nights, and a proud member of the Simply Scary Podcasts Network. Visit simplyscarypodcast.com today to learn more about our network and our other amazing storytelling programs. Tonight's program was hosted and its featured stories performed by yours truly, Otis Jiry. Selected stories have been adapted with the kind permission of their respective authors. Original music provided by Luke Hodgkinson and Jesse Cornett. Sound design and final mixing and mastering provided by executive producer and director Craig Groshek. Program's artwork and logo by David Romero. If you're looking for some fresh tales on a daily basis while waiting for the next podcast, check out my YouTube channel, the Otis Jiry channel, and my extensive collection of narrated tales there. Simply search on YouTube by my name and you'll find me. And don't forget to subscribe and press the bell notification icon to get my latest releases. Got a scary tale of your own that you'd like performed? I take submissions. Email it to me today at otis@simplyscarypodcast.com to have your terrifying tome considered for production in a future episode of this show. That's OTIS@simplyscarypodcast.com. If you've enjoyed what you heard on tonight's program and are joining us on your favorite podcast app, subscribe to us to be sure you never miss an episode, and leave a 5-star review and a comment. Your feedback means a lot to me. You can also follow Chilling Tales for Dark Nights and yours truly on Facebook to connect anytime and get the latest updates on this and other programs and my channel. If you're listening on the Chilling Tales for Dark Nights YouTube channel, do us a favor and hit the subscribe button and the bell notification icon for ctfdn as well to get more spooky tales from me and the crew and another episode of this program each and every Wednesday. And don't forget to hit that thumbs up button to tell us how we're doing and leave a kind word or a request. And don't forget to visit us at chillingtalesfordarknights.com and consider supporting the team by becoming a patron. In addition to helping us out, You'll get exclusive access to our audio archive and ad-free downloads of all your favorite stories, including those you've heard on this program. As for me, I'll be back next Wednesday with more terrifying tales to keep you up all night. But that's all right. Who needs sleep anyway?
Chilling tales for dark nights.